Alright guys and girls, thanks for taking a look at this video here. I'm going to show you all a little bit about something we're working on with our project, which is calculating the cost of materials when you are designing your waterfront park. So just to start out here rather simply, I'm going to draw a very basic park structure and then put a couple walkways across it, and then maybe a green space here, some green grass or something like this, which would be a sort of a triangular shape. So one of the things you need to do with your project is you obviously need to be able to calculate the area of your items as well as then the cost of the materials. So if we have a green space here, that is my park, and then let's say we had some red, maybe this is kind of some red brick. You've got a red brick walkway going across, and you need to calculate the space for that. So obviously in the course of your park you're going to need to define the measurements that you're using and so forth. So let's say that this was 5 feet wide here, and this section was, let's say, 30 feet long. Okay, and you're going to need to calculate your materials cost. Well, first you need is to define or calculate the area of that space. So if you recall, as we've discussed, area of a rectangle is length times width. So we're going to say the area is 30 times 5, which gives us 150. And remember your units, feet squared. Okay, now that's not the cost, so you need to then calculate the cost. So we're using red brick for this case. That's something you should have looked up on the project resources to figure out what the cost was. Let's say that that's $2.98, and it's usually sold in a square foot. Okay, well, you have 150 square feet. Your cost is $2.98 a square foot. So what do you need to do? Well, you need to take 150 square feet, which is what you have, times $2.98, which is the cost of that item. So if we pop up our calculator here and we do 150 square feet times $2.98, and I come up with $447. So this red brick walkway is going to cost me $447. Okay, now something very similar with the grass space, but it can be slightly more difficult. So let's erase this here, and let's work then on our triangle space. Okay, so if we erase this here, and then we will work on our triangle space, though the green grass. Now this is slightly different. Remember our area formula for a triangle. So our area is 1/2 the base times the height, which of course you'll have to measure and define for your project. So let's say that this is 10 feet, and this is, let's say, 8 feet. Okay, so we're going to call this 10-foot section the height of our triangle. So we're going to say the area equals 1/2 times our base is 8 and our height is 10. Okay, now if you remember to multiply that together, remember multiplication order doesn't matter, so 8 times 10 is 80, and then 80 times 1/2 is 40. Okay, 40 feet squared. Now, when you're talking about doing planting grass seed is sold a little bit different than the brick, so you have to be aware of the material that you're choosing. So our grass seed might be $20.99, and that will usually cover 1,000 square feet. Okay, so we can see in this case our 1,000 square feet of grass seed is far more than we actually need for our space. So we need to do a little bit of division there to actually see what part of that $20.99 do I actually need to use. So we're going to take our 40 feet squared, and we're going to divide it by the 1,000 square feet, okay, to actually find out the ratio that we need to actually use. So we're going to say 40 divided by 1,000. That's only so this equals 0.04 of the bag. That's all we need. We don't need much of it at all. So we're going to take now our $20.99 for the bag times our ratio, 0.04, okay, and then that's going to give us $20.99 times 0.04 to cover 40 square feet in grass seed is only going to cost us about 84 cents. Okay, now keep in mind, when you're doing this project, you are doing an entire acre. That acre is 43,000 square feet. So this would be a very small section as an example. It's highly unlikely that you would use such a small section. So we might want to look at that and slightly raise our numbers a little bit and go through the very similar calculations but with larger numbers. So what do I mean by that? Well, instead of making an 8-foot section by a 10-foot section, let's say that this was instead 100 feet and this was 50 feet. Okay, so we can use our same formula, area equals 1/2 base times height. Okay, so we're going to say 1/2 times the base of 100 times the height of 50. All right, now 100 times 50 is 5,000. 5,000 times 1/2 is 2,500. Okay, significantly larger. And remember our units, feet squared. Okay, again, we're still going to stick with the grass seed. It's still $20.99. So we're going to take our 2,500 square feet that we have, that we need to put grass seed on, and we're going to divide it by 1,000 square feet. That essentially is telling me how many bags I need to use of grass seed. So pull up our calculator here, 2,500 divided by 1,000, I get 2.5. So I need to use 2.5 bags to cover that triangle, if those were indeed the measurements. Okay, so now I'm going to take my 2.5 bags times the price per bag, and it will give me a final cost. Grass seed, whoops, grass seed is not that expensive. Okay, $20.99 times 2.5, I come out with about $52 in grass seed. Okay, approximately. Remember, there's our approximate symbol. Okay, so about $52. So hopefully that is a good video. If you're struggling to calculate the materials cost for your park, ask questions in class. We've been covering the different types of areas, perimeters, and so forth. There's also the videos, tutorials on the project website, so go review those as well if you're also still having difficulties.